What's up, everyone, and welcome to episode 241 of Two Amazon Sellers and a Microphone, brought to you by Solozo. Today, I'm going solo again. Chris is out, but I'm excited about our topic today. How about scaling to $150 million? How does that sound? That sounds exciting to me. We're going to be talking about that and many more things with our guest today. Joining us is Fernando Campos. He is the co-founder of MarketplaceOps. What's up, Fernando? How are you?
What's up, Dustin? Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Yeah, excited to chat and share some stuff today.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've had a lot of fun in the last few minutes chatting before we went live. I have a feeling this is going to be a really fun conversation and informative, but we should start with the fact that you're in Belize right now. That's pretty sweet, huh?
Yeah. So my fiance and I have been kind of traveling around for about 2 years now. It'll be 2 years in July. And so this year we're doing it abroad, kind of hopping around Latin America, and then we're going to Europe next month. But yeah, we decided to hang out in Belize. Yeah, we're both kind of beach island people. So
Yeah.
just hanging out, scuba diving, that kind of stuff.
I love it. That's what I really love about this business, about this space.
Hmm.
The location where you are is irrelevant. We can all be connected. We're talking right now. You're in Belize and
Totally.
I'm in Kansas City. And you can, operate from anywhere. So, the ability to transform your life into quote unquote, the work-life balance and enjoying your life and enjoying what you do, that I feel like Amazon created that for a lot of people. It's really fun. It allows you to, you come to work happy. If you're
Totally.
if you're in Belize, how can you not be happy, right? It's amazing.
Yeah, you're so right. Yeah, I love Tim Ferriss kind of talked about, like lifestyle design, right? And so you can kind of design your lifestyle. You can have, start your day when you want, end your day when you want, take long lunches, surf in the afternoon or whatever. Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, that book I feel like really opened my eyes. That 4-Hour Work Week.
Same.
That hit. I read that whenever that came out. That was probably, I don't know how long. That was more than 10 years ago, probably, that came out. But shortly after that, that's when I started my own Amazon business and didn't know where it would lead me, but it's been a wild and fun journey, that's for sure.
Totally.
I love it. Well, let's start. I'd love to get talking about freedom and lifestyle. How did you get into this in the first place? I'd love to get your background. Like, what were you doing in your previous life? What brought you to the Amazon space? And then, starting a large agency, that's no easy feat. And then, working hard to scale these brands. You got the floor for a little bit. Let's hear your story of how you got into this.
Yeah. So, I guess in my previous life, I was more of like a startups person. So, I helped start a company called Any Perk, which was doing employee perks, for a lot of small businesses. Kind of thinking about Google, Facebook provides these amazing perks, and then so we'd negotiate with thousands of small companies, and then provide similar type of experience to smaller companies. I was employee number two, head of sales there. Did that for a few years, and this is back in 2011. But yeah, at the time, having been employee number two, helped build that company to millions in revenue. Then it was kind of getting that itch of hey, I want to do this for myself. I want to have ownership, even if it ends up being even if I don't make as much in the beginning, in the first few years, I want to have that kind of autonomy and that ability to kind of live the life that you're wanting to. I feel Tim Ferriss kind of screwed it up for me in a lot of ways, where it's I can't go back, right? After reading that. And so Nick, my business partner, is one of my best friends from college. So him and I had joined a previous startup together. We'd worked for a little bit together, and then went off and kind of built these two separate companies. And then I guess towards the end of my 2 years at that startup, we were kind of getting that itch, and so we were kind of just constantly brainstorming ideas. But at that point, I'd done really well, unfortunately, and it was just time. We're okay, we're not the kind of people that can work through the night and onto the weekends and really have that ability to to like moonlight, I guess, or build a company on the side. So we actually just quit, and then we didn't even have like a fully fleshed out idea, which is kind of crazy in hindsight. Um, but we knew that we wanted to do e-commerce because a lot of our closest friends were there in that space, and so we could kind of lean on them with like questions. And so for the first like 4 or 5 months, we were kind of like messing around with like kind of like a reseller website, but similar to like Huckberry, if you're familiar with them. But what we realized is that like the even though we were growing really fast, our margins were too small, our conversion rate was too small to really make it work, and so we've kind of modeled it out that it would take us like 18 months to get back to like our old like standard of living. And then we're like, okay, that's just too long. Like I'll personally run out of money before then. And so, yeah, it's just crazy. We'd heard some podcasts, and this is like before like FBA and everything was such a like prolific thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we heard about this podcast that was talking about like selling on Amazon, and then so we started doing research a little bit more about it. And actually, yeah, coincidentally, my like business partner, we're at his apartment working, and then like an Amazon package comes, and we were kind of like leaning towards selling on eBay at the time. And then it was kind of like, wait, we buy everything on Amazon. Like, why would we sell on eBay? Like, we never use eBay. Like, and then is like the question naturally, can you even sell on Amazon? But yeah, man, like we listened to the podcast, downloaded like a course, and then just like 180 switch from like building our own website to selling on Amazon. And then we just kind of stumbled into private label because it just made the most sense to us.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, I mean, fast forward that. So this was late 2014, early 2015. And so it's been 8 years. We've built a bunch of like home and kitchen brands. We've built like software in the space like Pixelfy and sold that last year. But yeah, today we sold like quite a bit over 150 million since starting.
That's amazing. I mean, I always ask everybody this because it's personal to me. I remember it's 2000 or 2014 was when I started my FBA business as well, and the amount of times I would just refresh, and you're like, oh my gosh, I made 5 sales. Oh, 10, 15. You're like, this is insane. That's when it becomes super real, and you're like, I can do this over and over and over again. And it's like that feeling there is a lot of empowerment in that feeling when you're like, I cannot believe this is working.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. You're like, yeah. I mean, we passed our Shopify sales in like the first month, like, 4 or 5 months on Shopify. We passed in the first month on Amazon. And then it's just like, yeah, the entire time when the products are on the water, you're just like, man, I really hope this works.
Yeah.
And then as soon as your app starts going off and it's like an adrenaline kick,
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, you just can't go back.
No, it's too hard to go back after that. But then you transitioned. I mean, you're still running those brands that you started currently?
So we've done a lot in the space. We sold off a lot of our home and kitchen brands in 2020. Then we have the agency now, MarketplaceOps, where we work with a lot of CPG brands, direct to consumer brands, helping them scale on Amazon. And then we also own our own supplement brand. So we have like about 4 supplement brands that we own. And then, yeah, so we kind of look at it as a flywheel. Like the agency kind of helps, honestly, because you have all these external stakeholders. And so naturally, they kind of help you see some of the flaws in like how you run your operations and like how you communicate, internally and externally, all that kind of stuff. But and then naturally, it's much harder to scale an agency in terms of just like the people and systems. And so we have our own brands and then there's obviously like a lot of knowledge sharing that kind of goes back and forth in terms of like, yeah, best ways to launch, or like, maybe a client will test out an idea and then have us implement it, stuff like that. So that's kind of how it works for us.
Yeah. I mean, you're right about that flywheel. I mean, as a seller myself, and then the opportunity to join with Solozo and talk with other sellers all the time. It's like a laboratory. It's like you're all working, and it's like it worked over here. Okay, let's apply these tactics over here. I mean, that's the way you've got to grow. I think talk about this a lot, but a mistake that I made early on was being way too isolated. I was just at my house running my business, and talk about a missed opportunity. If I had the knowledge I have now from networking and talking to other people and implementing tactics that they're implementing, I think I would be in a much different place with my own brands from the start than I am now, and it's really important. So let's talk. There's so many things I want to talk about with what you've gone through here, but I want to talk about your agency right now. What are the services that you offer for your clients? Who's sort of an ideal client for you to work with? You can take it from there.
Yeah, it's a great question. Thanks. Yeah, I mean, so the types of brands that we work with, a lot are like in like the CPG space or direct to consumer space. We work with some like Amazon native brands. It kind of spans the gamut. I think typically where it starts to make more sense is that they're doing about 50 grand a month in revenue on the channel, or they're like venture backed. And then, yeah, I mean, like, I guess like the profile is, it's usually like a brand that just wants to scale faster. So like they know that Amazon is like this 800-pound gorilla. It's obviously going to be an important channel for them, but they don't have like the bandwidth or the like the resource or even like the ability to build teams as well as we do. And so they want to focus on something else. Maybe it's like product development if they're more of an Amazon native brand, or maybe it's like their Shopify or going into retail if they're like a more of a direct consumer CPG brand. And then so they'll kind of kind of leverage us. So we'll act kind of like as an outsourced chief Amazon officer, if you will. We'll like, create the strategy in terms of like creating the OKRs for the year and the quarter. And then they sign off on it. And then we go and execute against everything, whether it's like, like the marketing ideas, like running advertising, completely revamping their listings. We'll even take care of like support, refunds, supply chain, like you name it. We're really like kind of a full service like strategy partner for our clients.
Yeah, I mean, I think there comes a point for anybody. It sounds like the clients that you're wanting to work with, that they've had the skin in the game they've built it to the 50 grand a month. They understand the nuances and the challenges, but then at some point to scale, they have to focus on other things, whether it's
totally
new products, whether it's new marketplaces, whether it's going D2C or going direct to retail or anything that they're trying to do. You can't do that unless you're really good at building your internal teams, or you just want to outsource different components of it. So I mean, that model is great, and it sounds like obviously you're doing great for your clients, which is always fun. I mean, I'm sure that's a great feeling, having those calls. If you're hitting your OKRs or exceeding them, that's got to be a lot of fun to have those conversations with them. Well, I always find that too. I mean, in terms of like ideal clients, because I have this conversation a lot with people. It's more difficult to have conversations and to get across an understanding of what it's going to take, or how much investment needs to be made to hit certain OKRs, especially on Amazon. That if it's somebody who knows nothing about Amazon, even if they've got a great brand, even if it's a great retail brand, it's tricky. It takes a lot more time to get them up to speed on what you're doing, or why should we dump an aggressive advertising budget up front and potentially lose money. That's difficult sometimes for them to understand, but somebody who's been doing that, they have that understanding. I'm sure that makes the transition a little easier. But
for sure.
But yeah, it's always an interesting conversation that I have, because it can be tricky. But let's dive into some of these tactics, because one thing that's fascinating to me is ultra competitive niches on Amazon. I mean, supplements is up there, if not top.
Yeah.
I mean, if my friend came to me tomorrow, I was like, I'm selling a supplement on Amazon, I'm like, you might want to run the other direction, unless you've
Mm-hmm.
got a load of money. But then you see people succeeding all the time, and you mentioned being in supplements. What
Mm-hmm.
does it look? I mean, launching a product and trying to gain market share in a super competitive niche. How are you guys able to achieve that?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, I mean, I think you know, in I guess the way that I think about it is that like, if you're going into like a small niche that's maybe does whatever 200 grand a month, 300 grand a month, then you need to take like a pretty decent size of like the market share to like, if your minimum threshold, let's say, is like 50K a month, then you need to take like a decent percentage, right? So if it's 200K, you need to take 25% of the market share. But if you go after like a big category that's like doing 4 million a month, 6 million a month, then you can now obviously do like get a much smaller percentage of the market share, and then still come out like further ahead than like the 50K. You just obviously, like, to your point, like you need to have like the marketing budget, and like I guess like the guts in a sense to really go into like a space like that. um but yeah, you're totally like on point. Like I think if you're doing like a 60 count of like vitamin C capsules or whatever, like you're gonna lose a lot of money right now, because it's just not really differentiated. It's like the equivalent of going into like silicone baking gloves or whatever, grill gloves
Mhm.
like today, right? There's nothing differentiated. But I think if you're going into these like more competitive categories, and you have the budget, right? Like then I think the way that you can win is by just offering better value, like really just figuring out like what intuitively makes sense in this category that customers are going to want, and then coming up with that in a category where like people haven't done that yet, right? And so like examples would be like, if everybody's selling like a one pack, you create a two pack, right? Or you can add in other things like for absorption. So like in like the turmeric category, a lot of people add like bioprint, but that's obviously been done before, in turmeric. But and then it's finding other supplements where there could be like a benefit to having something else there for absorption that hasn't been done. You could add in extra ingredients that have like the same benefits, so you're kind of creating like a product that has like multiple ingredients, kind of similar to like a multivitamin, but instead of just being a multivitamin, it's maybe like a liver detox supplement, things like that. But I think you're just really imagining like the customer experience for like the keywords that you're going to be going after. And it's just like, okay, well, if my product was listed here on the front page, like would it stand out, or is it going to be exactly the same as everybody else? Like, is my bottle going to be the same? Is my label going to be the same? Like, if I launch with a two pack, will it look pretty differentiated here? And then so I think that's like kind of like the first step is we spend so much time like merchandising, and then really like like thinking about like what can we do that's going to be differentiated, um, and then we run like a bunch of polling campaigns. So we like obviously get pricing for the manufacturer and all that kind of stuff. So skipping like a few steps there, but then we spend a lot of money like actually polling customers, like hitting our lists, and then just really trying to get feedback as much as possible of like, hey, like if we take like three of our closest competitors and our product, like what percentage of the clicks are we going to get? And then so you can use like a PickFu, for instance, to kind of run those polling campaigns. And so, yeah, what we like our like best products are the ones that end up taking like 50% or more. Sometimes it's like even as high as like 75% of the clicks or the votes. Um, and so that means that we know like, okay, we're most likely going to dominate, especially once we catch up like in terms of like reviews and momentum and all that kind of stuff. um but yeah, I mean, we'll go into the category like price slightly above break even just to cover some of the ad spend. We'll run like an aggressive like coupon, and then we'll use that to kind of modulate the price like over time, where we're maybe decreasing the coupon. So maybe it's like a 30 or 40% to start, and then we'll kind of just decrease it over time to modulate the price. And then I hit like the same like price bands situation on Amazon. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think for the most part, it's just like having like a really detailed strategy. So we're tracking every single KPI that you can think of every single day, which seems to be like overkill. Thankfully, we've automated it now. Um, but yeah, I mean, we're tracking like sessions, conversion rate, like the rank on the priority keywords, like yeah, like every little thing, like organic sales per day, um, advertising sales per day, like every little KPI. And then our brand managers that are handling the launch are just kind of monitoring every single day, reporting back, and then making slight tweaks. Um, and then we kind of do that for like the first, like honestly, like 4 to 6 months, depending on the product.
Yeah, the thing that stuck out to me, based on what you were saying, is the amount of work before you even decide on a product. The amount of work that you're doing, you're vetting the niche, you're getting running those polls, making sure this is going to be attractive to the right audience, making sure that there's going to be differentiation, of course, building out all of your assets. What's this product going to look like? How does that compare? Do people like this one better than this one based on the assets that we're doing? So I mean, you're minimizing your risk greatly
Totally.
by doing that ahead of time, which I feel like is can be a mistake that people have. I mean, yeah, like you said, somebody's like, "Oh, look at how many vitamin C sales there are." Okay, they want to get into it, and you're like, "Well, that's tough." The first page of vitamin C, they've all got like 150,000 reviews. So
Totally.
And are you going to have is it going to be half price? How are you going to enter into that market, in a way that doesn't reduce your risk? I mean, it's very, very difficult. So the differentiation, I think that's where in competitive niches is where you need to be. That stands a lot. So anybody listening, make sure you do put a lot of time into your product research before you go into one of these categories. But then how do you handle, certain categories? I mean, you're talking about to get like top of page ads, you're talking about like $30-$40 clicks. A lot of times it can be outrageous. I mean, what's your strategy on going after some of these? Do you just avoid the main keywords sometimes, or how do you do that to make it more efficient on that launch?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I mean, obviously, it kind of changes over time, like as Amazon changes a lot of rules. Yeah, I mean, I think, obviously, you used to be able to do search, find, buy. You're not allowed to anymore. Yeah, but I think that like is a really helpful way of kind of shifting budget from like to more of a one-time expense, like a launch expense instead of like kind of an ongoing expense. Um, but I think, you know, what it really comes down to in terms of like advertising and just like the overall strategy of Amazon, in my opinion, so much of it has to do with like your relevancy and like what you're going after. Some people are just going after these like really broad keywords, like yeah, going back to like even just like let's say vitamin C, right? Like if you're going after like even vitamin C supplement, a lot of people would be like, oh, that's really relevant. But like there's still so many different types of like vitamin C, right? It could be like the tablets, it probably could be capsules, like gummies, like liquid. And so like, yeah, if we were, let's just say, to do a liquid, then we'd be really going after like vitamin C drops, vitamin C liquids, so that it's really like hyper relevant. And then again, like yeah, having like yeah, just like a kind of combination of strategies, leveraging like outside traffic, Amazon, like advertising, and really going after those like hyper relevant ones. I think is really important. But then again, it's how differentiated our product is, where we know that just generally, if we can have like a higher click through rate like on advertising, and now you can kind of ballpark this using like the search query like performance reports, but like kind of just getting an understanding of like generally what's like the click through rates for like a category, kind of comparing that with your own products. But and then the idea just generally is that like we'll spend a lot of money on advertising for sure, like in the kind of launch phase, but over time, like we can drop that percentage of like tacos to like a really profitable range, but and then our revenue is so high that per listing that or per parent ASIN that like all the numbers work out. And so yeah, generally I think what we see like across our clients is like the ad spend as a percentage of revenue is usually around like 10 to 12% typically. Our supplements is quite a bit higher, so it's like about like 20%. But when you're thinking about like the gross margin of a supplement, then like that obviously works out. And so yeah, generally that's kind of how we think about it.
Sure. And the benefit of a supplement is the repeat purchases. I mean,
Exactly.
if you've got a lifetime value of a customer that's significantly higher than the per unit cost, then those then you can absorb that higher tacos or higher ACOS. That's the
Absolutely.
game. That's
Yep.
the game. Then it
Totally.
goes into, retargeting buyers and all the other things that you need to do strategically to get them to continue to buy. But yeah, though, one thing that you mentioned, I feel it's important to repeat, because I feel like it's a mistake a lot of new sellers and lots of sellers make, is they're not really, really laser targeted on their advertising. They go way too broad, and then they get frustrated with the results. And I think it's almost like that FOMO. It's like if you were selling vitamin C drops, is it a better play to just completely focus, like you said, on liquid drops, vitamin C, and just avoid, a broad match for vitamin C or something like that on your campaigns? They feel like they're missing out on potential searches, but they're really just probably throwing money down the drain, and probably also killing their conversion, like their unit session percentage on Amazon as well, which doesn't help too much.
Totally. Yeah, you're spot on. Like, and just to be clear, we'll go after those broader keywords eventually, but I think what we're really focusing on in that early days of the launch, like to your point, is really maximizing that conversion rate. So, which is why we have the low price, why we're going after the really relevant keywords. And yeah, and one other thing that I kind of touched on, but I think it's really important, but is like being able to really you want your customer to be able to like understand the differentiation through the main image, right? Like someone actually asked me recently to kind of look at a product. Yeah, I mean, it was like one of those leather journals. And then, I was asking them like, what the difference was between their product and the other ones. And they're like, oh, ours is higher quality. But like when you look at the like incumbents on Amazon, it's like everyone has like 4.8, 4.9 like ratings, and so they're showing 5 stars. And so even though yours is you've actually taken the time to like order it and compare quality, it's like if you can't really see that like and distinguish the difference in quality through the main image or through reviews, then it's like it's going to be impossible for the customer to know unless they decide to order both. But like, I mean, what percentage of people are going to do that? And so I think just really being able to distinguish like that differentiation through the main image is really important and not talked about enough.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's again, that's a story that I hear all the time too. I mean, I'm talking to someone, they're like, no, you don't understand how good this product is compared to this product. I'm like, you're right, I don't understand, because it looks identical.
Yeah.
It looks, I mean, totally. I get it now after talking to you for 20 minutes, but
yeah,
how are you conveying that to someone that you've got their attention for 15 seconds?
Totally.
It's like,
yeah,
you can scream it all you want, but it's
yeah. I think about like you ever go to like Costco and you look at the TVs next to each other, and then there's like that's how they get you, right? They get you like the more expensive one because you see like the difference in sharpness or whatever when they're right next to each other. But then when you kind of like think about it, it's like when I go back, if I just ignore the TV like next to each other, I have this in my house, like it's gonna look great. You know what I mean? And you realize that like customers don't have that luxury of walking in, like when you're shopping on Amazon, of seeing everything next to each other and then like touching, feeling, and then deciding. Is like they're just looking at a main image, Like sometimes the title, maybe they'll click into your listing, but it's like they don't have like, in supplements, they don't like stack up all the formulas next to each other and kind of compare, right? It's
Right.
just like, what can you really communicate through that main image, through the like, ideally, optimizing to get like better reviews and all that kind of stuff. But they have such limited touch points, especially from the search results page, that like you just really have to communicate it through that main image.
Yeah. And you see in supplements attempts at that. You'll see the bottle and they'll have like ingredients sprinkled around it, and all the different things, which is if that is approved and you can do it, that's a great way to try to differentiate, to try to highlight it. But then everybody does the same thing.
Exactly.
And then it's a game. There's a lot of testing, trial and error, pivoting. One thing that I've was working on recently with one of my products is I realized that the customers buying it was actually a completely different audience than I had expected. I just pivoted. I laser focused on that segment, that customer. I redid all my images, changed the coloring so it highlights them, and that had a huge impact. And if you're not paying attention to that data, or if you're trying to go to a wide audience, maybe you have a multi-use type product, and the majority of your customers are coming for this one use, maybe you should refocus on that. So I think that's part of the game, is making sure you're taking in that data and making the adjustments necessary to continue that growth. Which is why when you get to that level, maybe outsourcing is the right idea for you, because that takes a lot of time. That takes a lot of resources and a lot of looking at data. And if you're doing that all day, you're not out looking for your next product to sell or your next marketplace to sell on. So they should come talk to you. Does anybody in that space talk to you right now?
Yeah.
What?
Honestly, come talk to us.
Yeah. What's the future look like for you? What's next for you? And where do you see things going in e-commerce and on Amazon in general right now? I mean, what's the next play, or what people be ready to expect?
Yeah, it's a great question. What's next for us? I mean, I think I definitely fall a victim of like the shiny object syndrome, and so really just trying to focus on the things that we have. So it's more of the same, just getting better at what we're currently doing, in terms of like helping clients scale on Amazon and growing our existing supplement brands. Try not to create new brands. In terms of where I think things are going, I would say I think the lines are going to be blurred a lot more personally between like CPG, direct to consumer, like Amazon native brands. I think, obviously Amazon's just gotten so much more competitive, since we started selling. And so you just know like the importance of like outside traffic now, and becoming more of like an omni-channel brand. I personally, I'm not really convinced in terms of like, scaling to like the Walmarts and eBays and all the other channels anymore. I just feel like I used to be a really big proponent of it. I think unless you get to like at least $1 million in revenue a month, I personally just wouldn't do it. That's just me. But I would, just really focus on like, speaking to like a specific audience, like you said, figuring out how to integrate like influencers or affiliates into your, into like your brand, and really kind of like finding like ways of like positioning your product specifically to them. All of your content and everything is really speaking to them, and just introducing more products. But I think, for me, like I'd much rather introduce new products on Amazon versus like adding Walmart and eBay, just because I think it ends up representing such a small percentage of the overall sales.
Yeah, well, I can attest to that for sure. Amazon is like 95% of my business, and
exactly.
I'm selling in lots of marketplaces, and maybe it's because I don't put a lot of the additional resources into that, but it's the 80-20 rule. Why would I right now? If that's going, and there's a lot of talk about it, and it will be interesting to see if some of these marketplaces do grow to where they are really capturing more and more. I mean, the one thing that I think is a possibility is if a Walmart or something else really starts to get traction. I mean, if they do a lot of, I mean, they're trying, I think they've got a lot of opportunity to try. I mean, they've got stores everywhere that they could turn into distribution centers.
Right.
But if that starts putting pressure on Amazon and maybe they're competing for third-party sellers in terms of like lowering fees or anything like that, would be interesting in the future. I don't know how that's going to play out.
Right.
That would be exciting to me, though, is if Walmart got, really grew and they became not an equal, but somebody who's close to Amazon. Maybe there's some pressure there. Maybe they have to make it more attractive to sell on one platform or the other. And there could be some competition, but we'll see. That's my hope.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it'd be interesting if they lower their fees, but yeah, I guess I mean, I think if you play it out, I guess it's like, well, then would the sellers decrease the price? They probably wouldn't, because then their buy boxes would get suppressed on Amazon, which, to your point, represents like 95%, right? So we would have better margins, but so maybe we would advertise more, but I don't know if that would necessarily like really move the flywheel in terms of bringing more customers. And so, I don't know. I think the way that we see it, like exactly what you said is like we see it like across the board. It's like 3 to 5% of your sales. Like the highest I've ever heard of is like 10% on Walmart, which is it can be meaningful, right? But it's like, for most brands, if you're doing like sub whatever 100, 200 grand a month, then it's like, even if you look at like the kind of high range of like 5%, it's just like it usually won't make that huge of a difference,
right?
Which is why we kind of just like, hey, just focus on launching another product, especially if like your previous products are doing much more than like what that expected value would be.
Absolutely, I agree totally. Well, I know a lot of people are listening right now. They're really interested in what you're saying. Maybe they're at a point right now where they're looking to outsource at least the Amazon portion of their business. They'd be interested in chatting with you. So where can somebody go to find out more about Marketplace Ops, more about you, start a conversation?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, marketplaceops.com, we have a bunch of resources there. You can reach out to me directly, both on LinkedIn or just at my email, Fernando@marketplaceops.com. And happy to connect and be helpful any way that I can.
Absolutely. Well, I'll make sure I put the links to the website and also your LinkedIn. I'll put those in the show notes. People can check you out, start a conversation if they're looking to do that, to outsource. So, Fernando, thanks for joining us. This has been really fun conversation. We'll get you back on. There's a lot of things like influencers. We could talk about that for 5 hours. I mean, there's so much
for sure
now to talk about. So we'll definitely be in touch, and we'll get you on sometime in the future to talk about what's coming down the pipe. So it's been a blast.
That's awesome.
Thanks again.
Thanks.
And, absolutely. And thanks everybody for tuning in. If you like content like this, make sure you're subscribing to the podcast. If you want to see these live streams, make sure you're subscribed to Solozo's social media platforms, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. You can turn on notifications so you get notified when we have great guests like Fernando. You can check out our conversation, and you can see all of our previous conversations we've had as well on those social media platforms. Additionally, if you're currently selling on Amazon right now and advertising is a pain point for you, you'd like to outsource just that, or you'd like to use a tool to help automate advertising for you, we can help you out here at Solozo. Go to solozo.com. You can schedule a demo. You'll talk with me. So I obviously like talking everything Amazon. So we'll talk about your business and how I'll give you a walkthrough of the Solozo platform and show you how I can help take that off of your plate so you can focus on other things. So head over to solozo.com and schedule a demo today. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for tuning in.